All right, today we are focused on how humans depend on the ocean and how they affect the ocean. So I want you to think of some things we depend on the ocean for. There's a lot of things. We need the ocean. More than half of the world is made up of ocean, and we need that ocean. One obvious thing is, if you can tell, they're fishing. We need it for food. But there's really a lot of reasons that we depend on the ocean. There's medicines that can't be made without ingredients from the ocean. So we have a really big dependence on the ocean. We carry materials across the ocean. That's how we trade with other countries. So today we are going to learn a little story about Fred the fish. This is going to go with your assignment, which looks like this. You have to have this open to complete Fred the fish. So on the left side, you're going to type what happened to Fred. That's just like the straight facts. It doesn't have to be a complete sentence, just what happened. The right side is going to be, how is Fred affected, or how is he affected and how is his environment changed by this? So this side is obvious. This is where you're thinking, what would be the effect on Fred and his environment because of what happened? So let's get Fred the fish up here. Let me make sure it's still recording. All right. And yes, I know I have not given you a full video in a while. Yes, I'm getting bigger. I know y'all are gonna notice that. But that's what happens. All right, so here's, see Fred? Here is Fred the fish. Isn't he adorable? He's so cute. So imagine a clean river. This is our clean river. As it meanders through a protected wilderness area. In this river lives Fred the fish. Fred has lived in this stretch of river his whole life. But now he's going on an adventure and he's traveling downstream. So, see if we can make Fred go on a little adventure. Swimming, he's just swimming. Fred swims into farm country. He passes a freshly plowed river bank, and it begins to rain. Some of the soil erodes into the river. So he's passing a riverbank, it's raining. They just plowed it. That means that they turned up the soil. So some of that soil gets in Fred's nice clean river. So, for what happens, you can just say soil eroded into the river or soil got in the river. You need to think about, I would pause the video and decide, how is Fred affected? Does it affect fish if there's soil stirred up in the river? How would it affect fish? How would it affect his environment? Can he see clearly? Can he travel where he needs to travel? So that's what you would put here. I would pause it after each one, fill that in, and then play. Fred nears a housing development. Some fertilizers from the pastures and lawns were washed into the riverbank a while back. Some fertilizer was washed into the river. The fertilizer made the plants in the river grow very fast and very thick. Eventually, the river could not furnish them with all the nutrients they needed, so they died and started to decay. Their decomposition is using up some of Fred's oxygen. How is Fred? So what happened is fertilizer got into the river, the plant started to grow, and what do plants do? They take in oxygen, or they take out in carbon dioxide and produce out oxygen. So they're producing extra, or they're using up all the oxygen. So eventually they started to die and decay. So when things decompose, you probably don't know this, I don't know. When things decompose, it uses oxygen. It's being broken down. So now Fred swims through there and there's not as much oxygen. So fertilizer in the soil, plants grew, plants died. What's really happening is plants are decomposing. That's what I would put here. Because they're decomposing, there's extra oxygen. How does that affect, or there's not extra, sorry. There's not enough oxygen. How does that affect poor Fred? If these decomposing plants are using up all the oxygen, how does little Fred, how does he affected? Right now he's just swimming along. Oh, he's still doing all right. So Fred swims beside a large parking lot. Some cars parked on it are leaking oil. The rain washed the oil into the river. Oil in the river. Fred's river doesn't look so perfect anymore. So oil got into the river. How does that affect Fred? How does oil in the river affect fish? How do oil spills in the ocean affect fish? How do they affect everything in the environment? The birds, the plants. How would oil in your environment, if you were swimming, how would oil affect you? And that's a common occurrence. Oil spills are a really big deal. Can have detrimental effects on the environment. During a recent cold spell, ice formed on a bridge. The county truck spread salt on the road to prevent from accidents. Let me pause for a second. Y'all know we down here from Houston, we don't have ice and snow very much, but they put ice on the ground when it's going to snow to help melt the ice. They put salt on the ground when it's going to snow or ice to help melt it. So salt on the ground is a normal thing. If you've ever lived up north, you know that. The rain is now washing salty slush into the river. So now we've got salt in our river. Poor Fred. Fred's just swimming down the river. And now he's got salt. Oh, Fred, hang on, man. Gotta live for us. Now he's got salt in his river. How is he affected? Does salt bother Fred? Does Fred need to be able to see? What do y'all think? Fred swims past the city park. Some picnickers didn't throw their trash away. Ugh, I hate littering. So the wind is blowing and it blows all of their trash into the river. Fred is like, what in the world is this trash? Think about it. Do animals know what trash is? Is that a normal part of their environment? Does he know that he shouldn't eat this trash? Does he know that this won't be easy for him to digest? I don't think animals are used to trash in their environment. I don't think they know how to react and what to do with trash. I know that my dog eats trash and then has a stomach ache. He doesn't know better. Several factories are located downstream from the city. Although regulations limit the amount of pollution factories are allowed to dump into the river, factory owners are not abiding by them. That means they're not following the regulations. They are dumping their pollution into the river. And this pollution is warm, and y'all see our bubbles? You see our bubbles? It's doing some sort of weird stuff with the water. Fred's just trying to swim. He's just trying to swim. Now he's got all these bubbles. Oh no, Fred, hang on. He's got all these bubbles all over him. How is Fred affected by this pollution that's just dumped into the river? So let's think about a factory. We don't know what type of factory. Do factories use chemicals? Yeah, some of them. So what is going into the water? It could be a mixture of things that shouldn't be mixed together. Could it be toxic? Could it kill some fish but not all the fish? Could it kill some plants but not all the plants? Could it cause them pain? Could it cause mutations? When pollution is just dumped into a river, that means they're not thinking about what lives in the river. And little do they know is people dumping that pollution in the river might need what lives in that river. So, and they often don't think about what they're dumping, like, if they mix this, or if they dump this chemical and then they dump this chemical. Those two things mixing together in the river could be bad. So how is Fred affected? Fred's just swimming. He's still going down river. Through all this junk, look at his nasty water. Poor guy. And the city's wastewater treatment plant is also located along this stretch of the river. Also, a section of this plant has broken down. Wastewater treatment. That's where they treat the waste water, like from the bathroom and such. It's broken down and it's getting into poor Fred's river. Ugh. And Fred just swims right on into this waste. How does that affect Fred? Finally, Fred swims past a hazardous waste dump located on the bank next to the river. Rusty barrels of toxic chemicals are leaking, and the rain is washing these poisons into the river. So sometimes people that live near rivers, even miles from the river, don't think about how what they put on the ground gets washed into the river. Same thing with the ocean. Same thing, even if you don't live near a river, you don't know what water source is closest to you, that what you're putting on the ground is getting washed in. So in this case, there was hazardous toxic chemicals leaking. Toxic. And Fred has to swim right into those chemicals. Oh no, he's not smiling anymore. Just kidding, it's a happy day. Fred survives and he keeps on smiling. Can y'all even see? He's still smiling in all that nastiness. So make sure when you're filling out this side, you're really thinking of how is Fred affected, and then what's the big effect? What is the big effect if all the plants in the river are dying, they're decaying, and that's using up all the oxygen? How does that affect us? How does that affect the environment as a whole? I know last year y'all talked about what happens if one animal, one organism goes extinct. Is that a small little effect? Does that just affect one other organism? So definitely make sure you're thinking of the big picture on this side.